friends. Welcome to the Christ Community Church Brawley podcast. We're so thankful you decided to take a moment to join us today to hear stories of the gospel changing lives and so much more. Today, our guest is Andrea Heredia, and I loved getting to hear her story about where she came from within her family and just how things began to crumble as time went on, but then how the Lord began to draw her out of the place that she was and restored her. And just a beautiful story I think that you're going to really enjoy. And so with that being said, why don't we bring you into our conversation with Andrea Heredia. Welcome to the Christ Community Church Brawley podcast. Thank you so much for taking a moment to join us today. This is where you get to hear about the gospel changing people's lives, church praise reports, Q&A, and other fun stuff that we've got going on here. And today, our wonderful guest is Andrea Heredia. Andrea, how are you?
I'm good. Very, very blessed. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And just to share a little bit about our relationship, how we first met, it was so funny. The Lord had just brought our family over to Christ Community Church and was installing me to serve over the pastor of Christ Community Brawley. And we were at a different location. You remember that?
Right.
That was a while back now.
Our old little home.
Yes, our little church over on 1465 Jones Street. And I remember going in there. It was one of the first several times I'd even been in the building. And I had walked in and went towards the back, and I heard some noise and things that were going on, and that's where I saw you. Yes. And you were cleaning the church building, and that's where we had first met. And it's been such a joy. That was over a year ago now, back in probably May of 2021, I think. Yeah. And it's just been such a joy to serve alongside you and to see God grow you as well, and how Lord's now brought us into this bigger church house, and we've been serving more people in different ways. And so anyways, we're going to get to hear Andrea's story, and I'm going to stop yapping over here. And before we get into your story and where God has brought you out of, we want to get to know Andrea a little bit more. And so I have some fun questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, here we go. We're going to start off easy. The first one is, what is your favorite food and drink?
Favorite food and drink. That was a hard one for me because I like everything.
That's good.
But I would have to say favorite food, definitely chopped Caesar salad with chicken, bagels, and coffee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And
There's
so
not one.
I'm a coffee lover too. What kind of coffee are we talking about? What's your favorite go-to?
I like café de olla. I always boil my water with canela in it, and I just make my little instant Folgers coffee with vanilla creamer.
Nice.
Yeah.
The first time I had cinnamon in my coffee was at Antojitos in El Centro, which they have great lamb tacos. Quick shout out to them. And I had asked for coffee, and it had this cinnamon flavor in it.
Right.
So ever since then, which this was several years ago, ever since then at home when I brew coffee, often I'll put cinnamon in it as I'm brewing it. My wife doesn't really like it though. No. So I have to be careful with that. Okay, second question. Favorite place that you've ever been to, and then where would you love to go?
My favorite place, hands down, has been SeaWorld. I love being there. I like that we get to walk around everywhere. I love seeing all the different sea animals, and I just have a really good time with my kids when we have gone. And then where would I want to go? I would definitely like to visit the pyramids in Mexico and Cancun.
Wow.
Yeah.
SeaWorld. So I hadn't been there in years and years and years, probably since I was a little kid. And this summer, our family, we went to SeaWorld. And we were there with 2 out of 3 of our kids. 2 out of 3 of our kids. And we were there for 6.5 hours.
Yeah, it's an awesome place, right?
It is. And it was really, really cool. In fact, Alex was there too, our man on audio today. And so third question is, favorite show or movie?
Shows. I don't really watch shows like for TV, but I like anything Marvel for sure.
Okay.
I love all of that.
Have you seen all of them?
Mostly, yeah. I mean, unless there's some that I don't know about, but I think I have.
Disney's just going to keep cranking them out because they know we'll keep watching them, huh?
There's many comments to be remade.
And fourth and final fun question before we dive into your story is, what are you learning right now? What are you most curious about?
What am I learning? I'm learning to just really be still. Really be still and just wait for God and what he has for me, because it's just one of those times in life right now, just to wait and see what's going to be next. And I'm really curious about the future and what it holds for me. I feel like I'm in that waiting stage where I'm just listening to him, and he's just really guiding me as everything, a friend, a daughter, an employee here at the church, as a servant. Just I'm waiting to see what he has next for me.
There's a time to be a Martha and to be in hustle bustle and
Yes.
go and crush goals and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But we know what Jesus said, that look at Mary, and she was doing the better thing, which was, as you were saying, being still. And that comes from the Psalms, right? Be still and know that I'm God. And Mary was doing the better thing of just sitting at the feet of Jesus.
Yes.
And that was the better thing to do. Well, we would love to get to know your story, and as you share about where God has brought you out of, I know that our listeners, our viewers are going to be encouraged by that and then challenged by that as well. And so first thing to kind of get us into where the Lord's taking you out of is, what was your upbringing like, and maybe describe your life before you got to know Jesus?
Well, my upbringing, I was not born and raised here in the Imperial Valley. I am actually from San Gabriel Valley, West Covina, La Puente area. And I was really spoiled as a child. I was really super spoiled. Everything and anything I wanted, I had it, because I was the first girl on both sides. I lived on a big house on the biggest hill that there was in West Covina. Yeah, I lived right at the top of the hill. I lived with my whole family. My whole family lived with us. My grandparents, all my uncles. My mom's the only girl, so we lived in one big house. And as a big family, of course there's love, but God was not at the center of it all. So I mean, without God, you have chaos, right? It's just a lot of very chaotic. And I did hold on to the fact that, I was very much loved because I was the only girl, but a lot of stuff that happened there, it stuck by me, later on. My grandparents were like the rock of the family. They separated. And that was around, I grew up there in the home. That was around like when I was 12 years old. So, I mean, I'm barely going to enter high school. It's just really traumatic, for me to go through that. Now I see it. At the time I didn't. So, I mean, I was just always just my way or the highway. I was like a little firecracker too, So, things were great until high school, and then I just went on my own. I felt like I had nobody to lean on towards. My mom was doing her own thing. Everybody was just kind of going their separate ways. We didn't live in that big house anymore. Nobody was really around like they were before. So I just kind of experienced life on my own, I felt, and I pushed everybody away that did want to come in my way. And it was just a time of like a dark place, I guess. I was always like really the life of the party. I always, I was always really funny around people, and around that time, it was so traumatic that I just pushed everyone away and kind of did my own thing, and it was not good. I kind of felt like I went into a little hole, and I don't know. It was just not that great.
So when you were first born and growing up, your family was tight-knit, big house. Things seemed to be good, but under the surface, there was a lot of chaos that was growing and brooding. And when you were getting into high school or around the age of 12, you said your grandparents separated and the house began to just dwindle away, and what seemed to be secure was no longer secure.
Right.
And so now we're in the high school years, and you're still in West Covina, right?
Yes.
And what would you say your life was revolving around? What were you doing?
Well, I was going out a lot. My mother had just she had met somebody. So, you know, her priority, I felt, was definitely with this new person in her life, you know, which is totally, you know, at the time I would think it was totally fine because she deserved it, you know, so long it was just me and the family. And now she wants to, you know, have her own family now that my grandparents are gone. So, you know, I didn't blame her, but I was very angry. And, you know, for me at that time, I was young. I was really going into high school. You know, I had my friends, and that's all I really cared about. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
And
sick.
to the degree that you feel comfortable sharing, what would you say was kind of like the lowest moment for you before you were introduced to Jesus? What was kind of the dark place that you're referring to? What did that look like?
Well, I went to go live with my father because this new home with my mother and, you know, her new boyfriend, it was just, my mom had 2 kids on top of that, like newborn babies. I was in and out of school. It was not consistent for me. School was not consistent. It wasn't something that was a priority at all, which is super weird, right? As a child, as being in high school, it's supposed to be your greatest years. And it just was not consistent for me. It was not a priority for my mother, and it was definitely not a priority for me. So when I was there, and when I was home, I would just try to escape. Escape was like the biggest thing for me. I moved to my dad's house. You know, I got in touch with my grandparents, which were on and off. I would talk to them, my dad's family. And I had just moved in with my father, and I was taking over his room there. Hence my dad is not, you know, he was very heavy in his addiction at the time. So to my grandparents, you know, it was kind of iffy. Do you want to come and stay, you know? So I went to go stay, and, you know, just me and my dad, we were just trying to have a talk, I guess.
Yeah.
And, well, I was like probably like 13, 12, and he gave me my first baggie of weed. So,
oh my goodness.
Yes, I mean, right? But at the time I was like, I wanted to take it and run, right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like I obviously saw that he was not the greatest, you know, physically and just the way he was speaking, but I took it and I ran. And he was like, oh, you know, have you done this before? I was like, yeah, for sure. So I was like, bye, you know, I just wanted to get away, and I wanted to go with one of my best friends at the time. And, you know, that was having her own family trauma, or, you know, drama. And we were best friends. She was like my right hand, you know, so we were just crazy together, the things that we did, you know. And that's how that happened. That's how I'm not going to lie, that's how I was introduced. And just when I saw that it was coming from somebody like that, I was like,
by
cool.
Your father.
Yeah, so it's a little easier, right? So my family did not know about this, like, meaning my mom did not know. So when it did come out, you know, it was already too late when it came out that had happened, because I was already doing other things. So it was like that didn't come out until afterwards. So after the fact, like a couple months later, by that time I was already, you know, drinking, smoking. I was just doing all kinds of stuff that a normal teenager should not go, you know, should not go to for comfort or none than that. And that's what I used it for comfort, for security, I felt. Because I felt like everything had been just pretty much just tossed up in the air. So I was like, you know, when I would do this, I just felt like it was an escape. It was such an escape, because I felt like I wasn't living in that moment, you know? Like none of it had ever happened.
You were putting a Band-Aid over the wound,
right.
But the wound was much deeper.
It was so deep. It was ugly, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I could say that now because I know I feel bad for that little girl that didn't, you know, that didn't get like, you know, guided the right way. And God was just not, I knew there was a God, but nobody directed me that way, or they probably did. I just didn't want to listen,
And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are listening or watching now who maybe went through a similar upbringing in the sense that things may have been good for a season, but then obviously the Lord is not a part of that equation and that family, and then people start to dwindle away, and maybe your own family members are your worst influences,
right,
and are the door to all this negative and dark things that then lead you down a rabbit trail of further darkness, right, and hurt and pain. And so maybe fast forward a little bit, and how were you introduced to Jesus or church, or how did that begin to look like?
Introduced to Jesus because, well, that didn't happen till later. Like, I mean, I did my first communion and all of that, but I just
grew
never
up maybe Catholic a
right,
little bit, okay.
But grew up Catholic as in like, I did my first communion.
Okay.
And after that, I mean,
didn't mean anything.
No, why? Yeah. Like, it was just like a
Cultural
thing to do. There you go. Because it was in our culture to do that, right? So I didn't make it to making quinceañera. We didn't have that, but yeah. So I was introduced to Jesus. I want to say really when I got to the home. I was in New Creation's home. That was, after a ugly season in my life where I moved here to the Imperial Valley, and it just got really bad. It was just me, my kids, and finally I felt kind of home because it was with my grandparents.
So I feel like we skipped over quite a few years. And so
no, yeah, we did, but
in high school, you're introduced to these things, early high school, and then you had a right hand, your best friend, and you guys were doing things together that were not very good.
Yeah.
And then things began to spiral downward, I would imagine. Now you have kids, which means that there was another person involved at some point. And so when did you arrive to the Imperial Valley? How old were you?
I came here when I was... Okay, first I came here when I was 16. That's because they lived over here, right? My grandparents lived over here. By that time, they were back together. So it was totally like for nothing, right? But I learned through those years. I came over here. I was here for a little bit, and then I had a boyfriend at the time. He lived in Arizona. He had just moved there.
And you were 16?
I was 16,
Okay.
He was a little bit older, and he lived in LA with us. And he moved to Arizona. I moved here just to be a little bit closer to him. Then I ended up moving over there with him. And so I was kind of all over the place at that time. I was here in the Imperial Valley. I had just came here. Then I went to Arizona.
And you're 16, so you should like be in school.
No.
And you were not.
Right. It was not I'm telling you, it was not a priority. I don't know why. So then I had my son, Robert, over there.
At 16?
Right.
Okay.
And it was not with the boyfriend that I had. It was, right? So there's another, you find comfort, right? And just
And there's a lot of people out there who are trying to fill a hole with other relationships. And just sleeping around. Sexual temptation is a major thing, especially nowadays with pornography and internet and all of that. And so you were caught up in those things.
Right. And it was just trying to fill that void. What was a void? It was just wanting to have security and somewhere to go. So, yeah, my son was born there in Arizona. And once I found out that I was pregnant, I came back over here. And then fast forward, I had my second child, which is my daughter, Angelina. And
you have two beautiful kids, by the way.
Thank you. They're always with me. I know. Right now, I'm surprised they wanted to come. So I mean, I had these beautiful little babies, and how did I end the relationship? I ended it because I just leave it like everything else. I would get so close to people, and then take what I needed. I felt almost like a security, and then I would just leave. Because it was just get too real, I guess, So, I was just not all that there, I feel. So I had my daughter, and then once I had my daughter, everything was good. I mean, good to me, I was working. We had our place here and everything, and just little things, little temptations, here and there would rise up till finally it just went down the drain. Everything went down the drain again because of the decisions that I made,
And maybe dive a little bit on what were those decisions to the degree you're comfortable sharing.
Right. So it was just me and the kids. I felt like really alone, I guess. Like, and I just wanted to have fun again. I felt like I've been doing this for so long, and it wasn't long at all. They were actually they were still babies, and I chose to go off on my own and have a couple of nights of just partying. And that's exactly what I did. And those nights of partying never ended. So it just got really bad. And, I was obviously addicted to methamphetamine for years, and that didn't go right at all. It was so bad to the point where a big part of my testimony is that I used to hear voices. So it was really, really bad. And it's funny how God works. I feel because, nothing really scared me. I was always very, fearless, right? Like, nothing would scare me. I didn't care if it was, my family, the cops, anything. But, these things that I would hear, I know it was not from God, but I feel that if I wouldn't have heard those things, then I wouldn't be here, my mind renewed and everything. But I used to hear my children and my family being tortured. I used to hear that, and it was just horrible. It was almost like living in hell, but I have no idea what it would be like. I'm sure it would be 1,000 times worse, but I was living on my own little hell on earth, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. I would hear them, and I would walk the streets, I would get up and I would walk the streets and try to go look for them because I just didn't know where these voices were coming from. And, at that time, it's just I felt that drugs were just it was just a normal thing to do. But at that time now, because I was so into it already that I didn't think, oh, it's the drugs, it's obviously because you have not slept, obviously because this, it's the chemical imbalance or whatever it might be. I didn't think none of that. I was I didn't want to hear it. I just knew that I was hearing these voices.
And there's an interesting correlation between drugs and demonic activity.
Right.
And so we hear that a lot, that when there's drugs involved, that there's voices and other seemingly paranormal activity. And just a little bit of a Bible kind of fun fact, or maybe not so fun, depending on your perspective, but the word witchcraft in the Greek actually comes from the Greek word pharmakia, which is where we get the English word pharmaceutical. And so there's a correlation between pharmaceuticals and witchcraft, according to Scripture. And we know now that when you take certain drugs, obviously illegal drugs, things that are not helping you but are hurting you, when you take certain pharmaceuticals, certain pharmakia, certain drugs, it begins to alter your mind, and you're no longer sober-minded. And when you are under the influence of these illegal drugs, this pharmakia, that begins to open a door in your mind towards demonic activity. You're now, your mental state is now weakened to now where demons have more influence over you, and you're beginning to hear voices and be influenced to do certain things. And so it's an interesting Bible correlation that witchcraft in English in the Bible is the Greek word pharmakia, and that's where we get pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And so there is a correlation between drugs and demonic activity, and you were experiencing that. And I'm sure that a lot of people that we come into encounter on the streets have experienced that too. In fact, maybe I want to give you a quick moment. There was something that happened right before we started recording, and I want to give you a quick moment to share what your experience was with that. We had a couple come in off the streets and share what your experience was with them.
Well, I just saw myself sitting there just a couple of years ago. She was talking about, she was just talking, and I don't mean this in any disrespect way, but just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Just complete nonsense, and just these things that, you just need rest. And it's just about her children, about identities, about this and that. I see it so many times. It's so common for that to happen to somebody that, is in this addiction. And it's it's not fun to see it on somebody else when you know you've been there, because you just don't know. You know how to help them. You talk about Jesus with them, but at the time they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking they want to get rid of this, and you see so much hurt. You see, like, so you need them to rest, and just like he says, that's one of my favorite scriptures. You take his yoke upon you, and he will give you rest. His rest is easy and gentle, and just it's something so light, and it's so much security, but we don't understand that when we're like that. We think that medicating ourselves in this way is just going to be better, but it's definitely not, and I've never met a functional addict ever. I've never have. So,
and for those of you who may not be familiar with where we're located, we're at 516 Main Street in Brawley, and because we're on Main Street, there's a lot of homeless or transient or people who are walking on the street, live on the street, who come through our property and who just walk in either to use the bathroom, get some water, or just be in the cool air and get away from the heat. And so we're always trying to encourage them, hey, you just know we have resources and an opportunity for you to not only get off the street, but to really help come alongside you and build the life that God wants you to have. That, I loved one of the lines that you shared with the lady that was here, that being on the street is not God's call for your life.
Right.
And it's true, living a life of drug addiction and just that kind of lifestyle is not the victorious life that the Lord wants you to live. And I'm not leaning towards name it and claim it prosperity gospel. Right. That's not what I'm getting at. But abusing your body and your mind the way that these people do is not what the Lord desires. He wants so much more.
Right.
And so maybe to now fast forward in your story a little bit, let's get to where you did meet Jesus. I know that you said that really happened at the New Creation Women's Home, which is exactly where we are encouraging this lady to go to, and this other gentleman as well to go to the men's home. And so maybe explain now your experience at the women's home at New Creations.
Wow. It was just a roller coaster of emotions, because you're going through all of this. It's just so chaotic, and it might not even be chaotic, because when you're on drugs, there's a pause in your life where it's just nothing's really happening there, other than just ugliness. So just coming from all of that to actually, being around people that are supportive, and just walking in there, there was a part of me who still, took it as a joke, almost like, okay, whatever, I want to be here, and I want to get my kids back, and I know that this is a safe place.
You have your own agenda.
Yeah, I
have
God
my
has
own. His.
Exactly. We have our own plans, but those are not his plans, most definitely. So, I walked in there like, this is gonna be easy. I could do this. Thank you for letting me stay here while I got off of this. Thank you. Thank you for helping me renew my mind. I just didn't have so much like love for it at first. I was just kind of using it just like everything else, right? So I went through it. I went through these months. Of course I was learning, because there's no doubt that while you're there, you're not going to learn.
It's really a discipleship home.
No, really, all day. It's an all-day thing. You start in the morning, you end it at 10 o'clock at night, You start at 6, end it at 10.
You're in the Word, you're serving, you're at church, you're active.
Yeah, but, it's really hard to let self die. That's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my whole life, is let self die, because, of course, that you're not used to that. You're not used to having somebody else control everything, and that's what I learned, is that God doesn't control you, because he's around all the time. We just don't see that, but he gives you that choice, you know what I mean? And I didn't see it as that then. I just thought of control, like, they're just, okay, well, fine, you can control me, but I'm getting my kids back at this end of this term, So, I was introduced to Jesus there because it's hard not to be introduced to Jesus there. You're constantly being reminded about him and what he's done for you, and that the gospel is being shared every single day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's what you're having. And, it's hard to believe that somebody died for you on the cross, but once you believe it, it's just this peace that you get, and all that finding security and finding all of this stuff in other people and men and drugs or whatever it might be, it's just not as fulfilling as the way God is, of course, because that's only momentarily. And then you find something that you don't like and you're done,
Yeah.
With God, it's like you just want to keep learning, and he holds to his promises, whether it's on your time or not, it's always on his time, and he just knows like the perfect timing. And I was just like fascinated like on how that can happen,
Yeah. And how would you say that God has worked in your life up to this point? What are some changes that you've seen? What has happened since then?
Everything's just different. I mean, everything is just completely different. My mind, the way I think about things, like it's not just so let me see. It's like you're actually thinking of other people. You're not just thinking of yourself. Because I was very like that. I was very, what can I get out of this person, or what, it's, you're thinking about other people's feelings, and you have like because you go through this like chaotic time in your life, you were put in somewhere so like where you were so weak, and so you don't just go judging people, I guess. Christ really does live in you now, and you see things through his eyes and not yours anymore.
I love that first sentence that you gave. He changed everything.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be.
Right.
That's one of the evidences when it's true, when someone's really surrendered their lives to Jesus, that they don't view him simply as an accessory to their life, like you put on a necklace or a shirt.
No.
It's an addition. No, like he is my life, right? Paul said in Philippians 1:21, to live is Christ and to die is gain. You were talking about how dying to self, man, that's the hardest part. And it's true that we all have this default mode of selfishness that given to ourselves. Our default mode, our default setting is to think for ourselves, and how can I use this situation, use these people, use this, use that for me, myself, and I. And God says, no, I have a totally different lifestyle for you. That's really ultimately
now
more
you're going to be used. I mean, for good stuff.
Yes. And so a couple of final questions. The first one is to the Christian, and the other is to the non-believer, someone who doesn't know where they're at with God yet. So to the Christian, to the believer, what words of encouragement or a challenge, what kind of challenge or words of encouragement do you have for them?
For the Christian, just don't lose hope, You have something so great to look forward to. We have, he went up there and he prepared a place for us, something greater than our imagination, like we can't even imagine how beautiful and how great it's going to be. And we have something so beautiful to look forward to. And as a Christian, I know it's hard every day, because we have duties as a Christian to put on that armor every day, to walk out there and, I'm not saying that we have to smile all the time or anything, but we have to encourage even when we're at our lowest, you know what I mean? Because
choose joy.
Yeah, we choose joy, and even in the hardest of times. But why do we choose joy? Because of this place that, he has prepared. And that's one thing that I hold so close to my heart. Like, who cares about what happens here? We're just trying to live for him while we're here, but because we have something so great that's coming towards us,
That's so good.
And I always tell my kids the same thing, like, whether it be bullying or whatever it might be, as little Christians, because they're little Christians, they accepted Christ,
They are your disciples.
Right, so I tell them all the time, like, this is just momentarily, make the decision right now, whatever it might be, based on what God tells you. And because once we get up there, we're not going to have to make big old decisions like that. We're just going to be with him and singing praise to him. And, he's going to be your dad. He's your dad now, So, that's my biggest thing. Just, keep pushing forward, because it's really hard to be a Christian.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's easy to go out there and do whatever you want and lean on your own understanding. It's easy to go, do drugs, stuff like that. But it's not easy to, remain solid for somebody so great,
Yeah, comfortable Christianity is not biblical Christianity.
No,
so
definitely
if you
not.
are in your comfort zone for a long time, then it's time for the Lord to kick you and nudge you in the right direction, right? And one final question before we finish off together is, to the person who hasn't given their life to Jesus yet, maybe they don't know where they're at in their relationship with God, what would you say to that person to encourage them to follow Christ?
Well, just like I was telling, the lady that came in today, she looked hurt and she looked like she needed help, and help that we can't give them.
Yeah.
It's only
deeper help.
Yeah, it's only the greatest doctor of all can give you,
Yeah.
He can change everything for you, but you have to be willing. I was willing to stay in the home, and if I was willing to stay in the home, then anybody's willing to do anything, It was just, I don't know, the biggest test is when you're on your own and, there's nobody else there to see what you're doing. And the biggest test is when you're on your own and the decisions and the things that you're thinking of, and nobody's going to judge you other than Christ. So I just think that you should not care what anybody says and just, live for Jesus, because, and I know it sounds like corny to the person that doesn't believe in Christ or doesn't know Christ yet, but it's not. It's like a way of living for a lot of us. So.
And that's a big thing, because peer pressure, what other friends or family think, that's a big driver for a lot of people. They may want to say or act like they don't care what people think, but deep down they do.
Yeah.
And it shows in their thoughts and their lifestyle. And so, to those of you who maybe don't know where you're at in your relationship with God, you're kind of wondering, you're exploring, you're seeking, just do it. Just give Jesus a chance, and don't care what other people think. Your friends, family, they can't save you. One day you're going to die and go to meet God face to face, and you will be judged not so much on your works, good or bad, because that doesn't get you to heaven, but you're going to be judged on what you did with Jesus. Did you accept him or did you reject him? And your friends and family won't be standing by your side to try to defend you. You're going to be there one-on-one with the Lord, and you're going to have that judgment, that decision to make. And so don't care about what people think. Just do the right thing. Just do the right thing, and the right thing is following Jesus. And so, Andrea, thank you so much. This has been really special for me, for our listeners and viewers. Thank you for sharing your story. And with that being said, we're going to continue with the show. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with Andrea Heredia and found it both encouraging and challenging. Now we're going to be diving into our questions of the month, and you can submit your question to our different social media pages. And the following fun and more serious question came from our Instagram, and so you can submit your questions there as well. This first question is a fun one, and it is from Annalisa Gastelum, and she asked the question, what occupation did you have when you were a child? Or what occupation did you have in mind, I should say, when you were a child? And so for me, and as you guys know, I'm flying solo today because Caleb is serving at a youth camp. And so I'll just be answering these different segments on my own as I fly solo here. And for me, when I was a child, at least to my remembrance, I wanted to be a chef. I really enjoy cooking even to this day. I enjoy having people gathered around a meal to spend time with one another, share stories. And a little fun fact about me, my favorite chef is actually Gordon Ramsay. Now, I know he doesn't bear the fruit of a Bible-believing Christian, born-again Christian, but I'm really drawn towards the attention to detail, the intensity. I enjoy his style. So that is what I had in mind when I was a child. And the more serious question actually comes from Liz Dovalina, and her question is this. How do you respond to someone who says they don't have time to read the Bible or go to church? Really important question. And I actually hear this quite a bit, that people share things like this about not having spiritual disciplines in their life or doing what they know that they need to be doing as a follower of Jesus. And so I want to say this opening phrase as lovingly and as humbly as possible. When people say those kinds of things, it really is just an excuse. It is. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have 7 days in a week, 52 weeks in a year. We all have the same amount of time. But we all use our time differently based on what's important to us. You see, we all make time for what we find important. And one component of behavior change that I want to share with you is this, that one passion must overcome another passion. Your passion for loving the Lord needs to overcome your passion for loving yourself. Your passion for doing the right thing needs to overcome your passion for doing the wrong thing. And I want to share a quick verse out of the Bible. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, Jesus is actually quoting Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3, which says this, "Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And so one helpful thought when responding to this question of how do I read the Bible or go to church when I feel like I don't have enough time or energy or those kinds of things. Well, you have to really ask yourself this question. Do I truly believe what the Bible says? Do I truly believe the words of Jesus when he says, "Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God"? Because if I truly believe that, then that is going to begin to change my priorities. You see, the Bible is not supposed to be cake for special occasions. It's supposed to be bread for daily living. And when people say that they don't, as a Christian, they don't read the Bible or pray or go to church, again, I want to say this as lovingly and humbly as possible, you are really beginning to commit spiritual suicide. You are starving yourself spiritually. These things that are foundational, basic, elementary, fundamental to the Christian life. If you're not doing those things, then you are beginning to starve yourself spiritually. And then people begin to wonder, why don't I have a relationship with God that is strong and passionate? Why do I feel like I'm spiritually dry? Why am I still fighting these sins? Why am I still in this dark place? It's because you're probably not doing the basic things that God told you to do. And so when someone says that they don't have enough time to read their Bible or go to church, this really is a matter of the heart. And that's how it is with many things. The heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. And the heart needs to desire the Lord and his word and prayer. And you need to really desire that. That's probably one of the key words is desire. So if you have any additional questions, then feel free to contact us via social media, and we would love to have those conversations with you. All right, now it's time for praise reports. And so I want to share with you something that was really special that at the time of this recording happened last Sunday. So this last Sunday, we had a great morning service and got to celebrate a baptism. It was really, really special. But then it was just a full day. I mean, I was here at the church property from 7 a.m. to about 10:15 p.m. But it was just so good because this past Sunday, we had a hip hop outreach concert, and hip hop is not exactly my musical taste of choice. It was at a different season of my life, but not so much right now. But there was a group called Hog Mob, which stands for Hooked on God and Ministry Over Business. And this group of rappers who come out of the San Diego and LA area, these dudes love Jesus and they know the word. They're faithful to the Great Commission. I mean, just such a great group of guys. But it was a great concert outreach. We had a car show. A lot of cars and motorcycles and show bikes came out. There was over like 20 or 25 different of those kinds of vehicles out in our parking lot. We had Flash Dogs catering, over 300 plates, and we had food and drinks going out. There's music. We raffled off a ton of items. Even there was a group that came and we raffled off a smoker at the end of the night. And these guys were just so talented. The gospel was preached. People made decisions to accept Jesus. People were prayed over at the end. It was just such a great day of ministry. And so one of the things that was kind of a main takeaway for me, and I had one of the artists named Dante come up during our Sunday morning service to share a little bit. And I'll share something I had said then with you right now, that the church is filled with many different people, and God saves different people with different backgrounds and skill sets and ideas and callings. And he brings all of these different people together to then be unified in this singular mission of sharing the gospel and bringing lost people to Christ. And God uses different people to go and reach different people. And man, that was just so portrayed beautifully at the hip hop concert outreach, where these guys who just come from a very different background, many times from gang violence and drugs and prison, that God is now using for his glory to go and reach very different people. And so that was a major praise report for us here. We had a great time, and we're definitely going to be doing things like that again in the future. All right, and that concludes episode 4 of the Christ Community Church Brawley podcast. You guys already know what to do. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, share this with your friends, and we will see you in the next episode.